injuries, a chipped tooth, conjunctivitis, lost the ability to speak. When the family friends recovered him, they found that even when given food, little Vladimir immediately began hiding it under his shirt. I will not say more now about the Bitkovs' harrowing ordeal. Their lawyers will speak to that, as will Bill Browder. Suffice to say, Igor, Irina, and Anastasia have remained incarcerated since January 2015. In January of this year, despite an earlier appeals court ruling that the Bitkovs' alleged offense was only administrative in nature and punishable with a fine, Igor was sentenced to 19 years in prison, and Irina and Anastasia were sentenced to 14 years each. These sentences were far harsher than those given to Guatemalan officials who perpetrated the sale of passports. They are harsher than sentences given to rapists and to murderers. What was CJIG's role in all of this? I would note Bill Browder in his testimony will point out, and I quote him in pertinent part, inexplicably, VTB Bank gained the legal status as an interested party in the migration case against the Bitkovs with the support of CICIG. In January 2015, a criminal case against the Bitkovs was opened at the direction of CICIG. And as he points out, as I pointed out as well, immediately after that, 70 armed police officers raided the Bitkovs' home, arrested Irina, Igor, and Anastasia, and detained them in a cage behind the parking garage in the main court building in Guatemala City. We need to know how this happened, what was the complicity, where has the investigation been by our government, by the United States, Department of State, IG. There are a number of venues that would lend themselves to a very thorough investigation. Where's the investigation by the United Nations? All of these things are something that we are going to pursue very, very aggressively. CICIG was invited to participate in this event. And when you hear people say, oh, they're a UN agency, they can't come and testify, let me just point out to everyone, I wrote our trafficking laws for the United States of America. It's called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. It is our landmark law on combating sex and labor trafficking. When I discovered that in the Democratic Republic of Congo, UN peacekeepers were raping little children, these are the peacekeepers, I convened 4 hearings, traveled to DR Congo, went to Goma, where the peacekeepers were, and invited the UN to come and give testimony. Now, under our rules, they weren't sworn in or were welcomed as absolute witnesses to the committee, but we have a very good way of having that kind of testimony. They gave us a briefing. It's a distinction without a difference. And Jane Hall Lute, who was the top peacekeeping person who was very much against what was happening there, but worked for the UN, number 2, she came and she sat right there and gave a full, thorough accounting and also a proactive approach as to what would be done to hopefully end this abuse by UN peacekeepers. I've done it other times. Kofi Annan's top chief of staff also sat here and testified. So CICIG is invited. I want to ask them questions, but they declined to be here. Just yesterday afternoon, let me point out to our friends and our witnesses, as I think you all know, the Constitutional Court of Guatemala, the country's highest court, upheld an earlier decision by a lower court that had granted the Bitkovs' appeal to be considered migrants and therefore under international law, not able to be tried as criminals. It is not yet clear what this ruling will mean. It seems to mean that the family could be released from prison, but they also could be deported back to Russia, and that would be unconscionable. So I want to make again the appeal to the Guatemalan government, to CICIG, to our government, to the United Nations, that this is the time to be focused on restoring this family as much as humanly possible and to provide them protection. They were refugees fleeing a Putin hit on them and their family. And to be treated like this, is just, it's unconscionable. You know, I've been in Congress 38 years. I chair the Human Rights Committee for this committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, co-chair the Helsinki Commission, and I've been on that commission since 1983. Been to Russia many times when it was the Soviet Union. To know the way the Putin government follows people that they are in disagreement with, that they rob and murder and rape. And again, we got Bill Browder here, who is the author of the Magnitsky Act. It was his idea. He's the one who made it happen, which is now having positive implications for human rights promotion all over the world, because it is now called the Global Magnitsky Act as well as the Magnitsky Act, which applied only to Russia. I just want to thank him and our witnesses for being here, because that takes bravery. You should see some of the emails we've gotten. That, too, is unconscionable, and I won't get into that now. With this hearing, I'd like to now introduce our distinguished witnesses, beginning first with Bill Browder, who has often been a witness before the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. He is a true human rights advocate, fighting for the weak and the most vulnerable, has done it so effectively, starting with Sergei Magnitsky, and now the Global Magnitsky Act is a tool that the U.S. Department of State and even other governments now are beginning to adopt as a way of holding individuals to account when they commit crimes against humanity and human rights abuses all over the world. Bill is the founder and CEO of Hermitage Capital Management, which is at one time the investment advisor to the largest foreign investment fund in Russia. Many of you may remember that authorities from the government of Russia arrested, tortured, and killed his lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, in November of 2009. And since then, Mr. Browder has sought justice for Magnitsky and, again, others persecuted by corrupt officials from the government of Russia and governments everywhere else. Without objection, his full resume will be made a part of the record, but I want to thank him for his